over almost of time as the Great Patriotic War. Russian occupiers in Ukraine have suffered many times greater losses and been tens of times less effective. This was reported by Oleksandr Kovalenko, a military and political observer for the Information Resistance Group, in a report on Obozrevatel media outlet. He noted that comparisons between World War II and the war in Ukraine are often made primarily in terms of duration. Specifically, the full-scale Russian-Ukrainian war has now lasted over 1,330 days, while the phase of World War II, also known as the Great Patriotic War, lasted 1,418 days. Kovalenko compared the losses of the Russian occupation forces in Ukraine and the Workers' and Peasants' Red Army (RKKA) during the Great Patriotic War. Thus, the occupiers' losses in Ukraine currently amount to over 1,127,000 killed and wounded, or an average of 850 people per day. The Red Army's losses during the Great Patriotic War amounted to 27 million people, or an average of 19,000 per day. We'll use the same principle to calculate tank losses. The occupiers currently lose 11,259 tanks, or an average of 8 to 9 tanks per day, while the Red Army loses 83,500, or 58 to 60 tanks per day, the observer calculated. At the same time, the number of main battle tank losses by the Red Army also included self-propelled artillery units such as the Su-76, Su-85, ISU-152 and others, which makes a detailed comparison somewhat difficult. Furthermore, Russian troops have lost over 23,350 armoured combat vehicles to date, or an average of 17 to 20 per day. During the Great Patriotic War, this type of vehicle was not so common, and therefore the Red Army's losses amounted to over 13,000 armoured combat vehicles, or 9 per day. The Russians have also lost over 33,680 barrel-type artillery systems to date, or an average of 25 per day. Meanwhile, during the Great Patriotic War, the Red Army lost approximately 90,000 barrel-type artillery systems and over 30,000 mortars, or an average of 90 per day. Regarding multiple launch rocket systems, the Russian invaders lost 1,520 units in this category, or an average of 1 per day. During the Great Patriotic War, the Red Army lost over 1,800, or an average of 1 per day. The aggressor country's army has also lost over 64,350 vehicles to date, or an average of 48 to 50 per day. During the Great Patriotic War, the Red Army lost approximately 410,000 vehicles, or an average of 290 per day. As we can see, the losses in many categories are simply incomparable, which raises questions about how comparable these wars can be given the disparity in scale. Or is it not so clear-cut? Kovalenko notes. He noted that the average frontline length during the Great Patriotic War was 3,000 to 3,500 kilometers. Meanwhile, the front line in Ukraine is 1,200 kilometers, which is 3 times shorter on average. The USSR's territorial losses and gains during the Great Patriotic War amounted to more than 5,400,000 square kilometers. In fact, the Red Army lost 5 soldiers killed and wounded for defending, liberating, and capturing 1 square kilometer. And in terms of time, the loss, liberation and capture of territory exceeded 3,800 square kilometers per day. The analyst noted Russian occupation forces lost more than 1,127,000 killed and wounded, capturing 71,108 square kilometers, or 16 bodies per square kilometer, and the rate of territorial capture is 53 square kilometers per day. Thus, Kovalenko emphasizes comparing the war in Ukraine with the Great Patriotic War is correct not only in the context of the time period, but also in the issue of interpolation of losses, the effectiveness of military operations, and their impact. Thanks to this comparison, we can see in figures that Russian occupation forces in Ukraine over almost the same period as the Great Patriotic War have suffered many times greater losses and been tens of times less effective, the observer noted. He noted that the scale of the conflict is entirely different, but by reducing everything to a 1,200-kilometer front line where only certain sections are active and interpolating all known casualty data, we arrive at a figure that would make Zhukov nervously smoke. Even the Red Army didn't fight with meat the way the Russian army does now, Kovalenko added. In these circumstances, the number of desertions in the Russian army is increasing.
He won't call himself a duke anymore, but that is not enough for many of Prince Andrew's critics. According to Associated Press, Buckingham Palace and the British government were under pressure Monday to formally strip Prince Andrew of his princely title and sumptuous home after new revelations about his relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. After discussions with his elder brother King Charles III, Andrew agreed on Friday to stop using titles including Duke of York. It was the latest effort to insulate the monarchy from years of tawdry headlines about Andrew's suspicious business deals, inappropriate behavior and controversial friendships. But he still technically holds the title of Duke, bestowed by his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. And as the son of a monarch, he remains a prince. Andrew's statement relinquishing some of his royal titles came after emails emerged showing he had remained in contact with Epstein longer than he previously admitted, and days before publication of a posthumous memoir by Epstein accuser Virginia Roberts Giuffre, who alleged she had sex with Andrew when she was 17. Andrew, 65, has long denied Giuffre's claims, but stepped down from royal duties after a disastrous November 2019 BBC interview in which he attempted to rebut her allegations. Many viewers saw an entitled prince who failed to show empathy for Epstein's victims and offered unbelievable explanations for his friendship with the late sex offender. Andrew paid millions in an out-of-court settlement in 2022 after Giuffre filed a civil suit against him in New York. While he didn't admit wrongdoing, he acknowledged Giuffre's suffering as a victim of sex trafficking. The government said it supported the palace's decision over Andrew's titles but should not act unilaterally. Under the UK's constitutional monarchy, the Crown does not interfere in politics and politicians stay clear of issues related to the royal family. Some also want Andrew evicted from Royal Lodge, the 30-room mansion near Windsor Castle where he lives alongside his ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, who will no longer be known as the Duchess of York. Questions have been raised about how Andrew pays for the house, which he rents on a long lease from the Crown Estate, a portfolio of properties that is nominally owned, but not controlled, by the monarch. The palace is bracing for more embarrassing revelations, just as the king prepares for a state visit to the Vatican this week where he is due to pray beside Pope Leo XIV. Giuffre's book, Nobody's Girl, is published on Tuesday and details 3 alleged sexual encounters with Andrew. She died by suicide in April at the age of 41. In an extract published in advance, Giuffre says the prince acted as if he believed having sex with me was his birthright. Giuffre also claims in the book that Andrew's team tried to hire internet trolls to hassle me. She said that Andrew insisted the lawsuit settlement include a 1-year gag order to prevent allegations from tarnishing the late Queen's Platinum Jubilee in 2022. Meanwhile, London's Metropolitan Police Force says it is actively looking into media reports that Andrew in 2011 sought information to smear Giuffre by asking one of his police bodyguards to find out whether she had a criminal record.